one of the interesting things that the Independent did in its later years, or what I suppose now might seem to be its middle years, was to have a series of guest editors, and usually to do editions which were in some way charity related. And we had, at one point we had Giorgio Armani, the fashion designer. We had Elton John. We had the founder of Body Shop, Anita Roddick. And then we had Bono of U2. And I became involved in that in a slightly bizarre way. During that period, I was chief reporter of the paper. So I didn't get involved in the production side, whereas I had previously been involved in production side. And I was chief reporter of the paper, so I was not involved with these guest editors, except on the occasion when Bono was there. And Bono was interesting because compared to Giorgio Armani, who brought in a sort of fleet of lieutenants with him, who were catering to his every whim. Bono had some assistants and he brought some people in, but Bono, was relatively kind of unpompous about the way he did it, and he had very kind of firm ideas about how the way he wanted to kind of guest edit the newspaper. And of course, Bono, prided himself on his connections with the great and good, that he was a sort of humble rock star who'd used his position as being a very successful but humble rock star to kind of propagate good causes. And the big good cause at the time was, of course, Africa and the third world, and issues of poverty, which had become a big campaign at the time. And that was the reason for his guest editing, was part of the sort of Make Poverty History campaign. And very late in the day of his editing, Bono decided that you had to have a sort of plan for page 3 every day of the paper, and he decided very late in the day, I think it was about 4 or 5 o'clock, that he was going to interview Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, who was then Prime Minister and Chancellor. Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, Chancellor and Prime Minister respectively, at the time, both kind of slightly busy men, and he was going to interview both of them that day for a piece about what the government was doing about poverty. And everyone said, yeah, okay, fine, yeah, carry on. Do you want the number of the Downing Street press office? And he said, no, I'll call them myself, And miraculously, within the space of about an hour, he had on one speakerphone Gordon Brown, who was somewhere in the world, and on the other speakerphone, Tony Blair, who was somewhere else in the world. And I was summoned from my hiding places in the newsroom to go and sit in the editor's office, because Bono was a bit too grand to actually, and was not actually a journalist, obviously, a brand to sort of take notes or anything like that. And someone needed to actually write this thing up for the page 3 of the paper. And so I was, as the sort of senior reporter, I was summoned to come and sit in on this interview and take notes and write it up. And I had this kind of, I had to go about 30 seconds notice of this, and so I had to scrabble around for the kind of tape recorder and the pencils and pens and etc. And with no preparation whatsoever, go into the editor's office. There's Bono sitting behind the editor's desk. And he's got, as I said, he's just making the connection to Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. And the unfortunate thing is, I said, although Bono was extremely well-meaning, and this was a remarkable occasion to interview the two of the most powerful men in the country, if not the planet, about issues of poverty, an opportunity that most journalists would give their high teeth for, to have them there as a captive audience. And Bono, with the greatest possible respect, not being a journalist, tended to rather kind of go off on one, would indulge in a few lyrical flights of fantasy about what are we all doing for this benighted country, that beloved and benighted country we call Africa, etc., without really pinning them both down and allowing them to get away with, typically politician style generalities and blandishments and the kind of PR shtick without ever actually nailing them down on how much money you're going to spend and what you're going to do. And it felt like a bit of a vanity project for Bono, and I was desperately scrabbling away and so forth, but also gritting my teeth that he was not actually asking the right and relevant and pointed questions. And I kept having to restrain myself from butting in and saying, "Excuse me, Prime Minister Blair, but," so it was a kind of slightly bizarre experience to be hearing him talking to these two. What was interesting, and I still have a feeling in my mind that Gordon Brown was actually in his bathroom doing this, because there was a sort of echo in the background, and you could sort of hear, I swear I heard water running. But anyway, Gordon Brown was actually came over much better. He was much more on top of it. He knew his subject. He knew he knew the money. He knew the issues, and he was really what really impressed me was his mastery of the subject. And he certainly knew a lot, as much about it as Bono did. Blair, on the other hand, came over very much like Blair is wont to do, very bland, very superficial, very kind of, he said the kind of right things, but it was clear he didn't have anything like the same grasp of the nitty gritty of it that Brown did. So after this sort of slightly bizarre interview, which went on for about an hour or something, because Bono wouldn't ask a straightforward question. He had to it was as much about Bono as it was about the issue. And I had to go and sit with a colleague who helped me transcribe the tape and produce a page 3 from this on Blair and Brown's assurances of that doing everything they possibly can to help the third world. So that was quite a bizarre occasion. But, it appeared the next day and everybody loved it.